So, more thoughts on the power of the idea of the practical, or maybe we should say the power of the being of the practical. So, by being, I understand, um, well, I was about to give more of the Catholic understanding because it's closer, but it's not exactly how Heidegger would understand it. But Heidegger's criticism is uh, Aristotle has been misunderstood to uh, fit the Cartesian view that there's a split or a break between the mind and the phenomena, but it's clearer in the Kantian take where we think of there's some kind of being that has senses and then it has to access an object. So when judgment means the move from somehow the senses to matching that object, then this seems to be somehow what people have in mind with the truth as adequation, or I forget the way they put that in the analytic philosophy department. But uh, the other term besides justified true belief, somehow, but you see the meaning somehow that through a judgment we're able to correctly say we think this thing is there and it is there, and the tree standing there is external to us, and then we satisfy ourselves with that. Where is the, and then that was maybe projected back into the medieval thinking with this notion of adequatio. But what seems to have been thought was more like what Aristotle is saying when he says, in a way, the soul is all the things. So just as we, the example usually given is just as we can get absorbed in a book, reading a book, and become the book in a way, we get absorbed in the world, and the world is somehow, we're participating in it while we're there. So the being idea in Heidegger simply takes that a little further and rejects the soul and the higher part of the soul as being some special thing, and says the tree as the treeness of the tree. Plato, I see the tree, but I don't see the treeness. But the treeness is somehow already there in the beings, so that the Heidegger tries to get rid of the distinction between physis and metaphysics, or presence, or the presence being somehow nomos, what the word speech does. Not necessarily consciousness, but something spoken of and brought into being in that sense, and so that being as what's spoken of can be contrasted with nature as what's coming forth on its own. Heidegger somehow, speaking of being, tries to get beyond that. I think of, in this sense, that into the beings comes the consideration of the whole. So, for example, in the question of this abuse of the practical, this is happening all the time when so I think this is the usage Peterson seems to evoke, is a kind of I would call it logistical reasoning. So it's like Max Weber reasoning, so that for instance, he mentions God can be reduced to a kind of heuristic principle, where then we can, supposing there were this being, what would he do, something like that, or what would we can ask or pose questions to ourselves which are useful in themselves, as it were. But this then it ducks the whole question again, because you're trying to ask the question of what the good is, but you already presuppose it. So, for example, in Agamben's work, when he keeps talking about biopower, his point is we're doing all kinds of things supposing they're practical, and they have to do, especially when they have something to do with health. but then we've presupposed that health is the most important value, especially because it's such a simple value that everybody kind of agrees with. So then the lockdowns, for instance, which even if you would admit that maybe the vaccination is good, although maybe a lot of people don't admit that, and there's a lot of concerns about that, you could still see why there would be reasons for not having the lockdowns for other reasons, because of mental health, because of other things. But then even then you're still arguing on the plane of health against health, because the state has come in, according to Gemin's view, and it's basically there's a de facto sense that health is the only bodily health is the only thing that can really be agreed on by everyone, and then it becomes the number one value of all values. And then when we speak of the practical, we assume that, and all kinds of logistical reasoning follows, including this issue of the state harvesting organs, which is taken to a further extreme in China, where you can see the state has an interest in killing prisoners in order to take the, at least they have it, whether that's actually being abused or not, I don't say, but I just say it's clear that this, just as in the Western countries, the state has an interest in getting people to sign up as organ donors. So then, therefore, in a certain way, there's the interest in people getting killed in car crashes. So there's this, the practical has reaches out into the whole world, and then it's present in the beings immediately, because it's not a matter of judgment, but it's just the way the beings are there for us. And so the distinction between the natural beings and then this notion that we can have a logistical game to solve natural problems isn't accurate. And the concept of the practical covers that over and makes us not notice that we're already presupposing what the good is. So that the practical, in many of these examples, I think, and Agamben, I think, has worked this out, and Zizek is fighting with Agamben over some of these arguments, which Zizek accepts, some of them, others he doesn't accept. But it's a good discourse where I think they, especially Zizek, is aware that one can't, he's aware in his bones, so to speak, that one can't just lightly speak of the practical in this sense. I don't hear him. He uses, if he uses the word, then I think he uses it while still being quite aware of what he's saying, and maybe only to say it's empirical. So there's other examples that I think I should look into that are, some of them are quite pressing on the, in fact, in a way, they're all simply the state of the current world, and therefore they show us that we should investigate and see what the current, which in a way, as some people have said, is what philosophy is showing ourselves what we are taking to be the good. So then that would actually correspond to the practical itself. If we were able to, with some examples like I was just giving, show ourselves more what tacitly we're already assuming to be good, just like the cannibals assume some things to be good, then this is a Socratic practice, I think, which brings us somewhat away from the superficiality of our own absorption in the general being of beings, which proves to be challengeable in the sense that one can wonder whether it's no more or less arbitrary, as Nietzsche does, than the beings of the cannibals or of the Mayans or of the Egyptians or of any other of the innumerable, not innumerable perhaps, but innumerable in possibility, but of great many forms that we don't even know about and have no sense of what they were like, this various states in the history of China, for instance. So I think I want to go into more on Zizek and Agamben, on some specific examples, and maybe try to keep this theme of not being captivated by the natural coming forth of the practical, which is present in nature. Like that's another thing. These things are, from Heidegger's point of view, the Da and the sign are totally overlapping, and you can switch back and forth at any time, which is a confusing thing to get used to in his way of investigating.